Good morning, Revolution, everybody, and welcome to our
Morning.
show this morning. Rosanna
Good
and
morning. Good morning, Revolution.
Anita and
Good morning,
Scott.
Revolution.
Good
Good morning,
morning.
Revolution.
Hope everybody out there is doing great. We have a wonderful lineup this morning. We're going to be talking, by the way, the concept of Good Morning Revolution is an important philosophical concept. I was just thinking about that before the show started. Langston Hughes was a bad dude. And when he talks about the morning of the socialist revolution, we're still in that morning. We're still in that morning. Lenin said that the socialist revolution is not a single event, but a series of events lasting an entire historical period. And so it's like 1 o'clock in the morning in historical terms, in terms of how our movement is going to, it may not even be 1 o'clock. We ought to get one of those clocks like they have for nuclear war. And we ought to
Yeah, the
put
one that's probably at like 30 seconds to midnight right now.
something like that. Something like that. Anyway, we got a great show this morning. We're going to be talking about the upcoming primaries, big battles taking place there. We're going to be talking about what's going on in the great state of Texas on women's rights and immigration. We are going to be talking about the terrible terrorist shooting in Brooklyn on the subway and the response to it by the authorities and the people. And then we got lightning rounds, which everybody loves. Finally, we're going to be talking about the Leninist concept of our press and the People's World Fund Drive. That should be a lot of fun. And then last but not least, events that are coming up, May Day and beyond. Well, let's get started. Anita, in the great state of
Joe.
Ohio, you got tough primary battles taking place, and I hear that the Republican candidates have moved so far right that they have lost their right frame of mind. Is that true or not?
If they ever had a right frame of mind, a correct frame of mind, they are just climbing over each other to get farther right than each other. And this morning, Donald Trump weighed in and endorsed J.D. Vance, who is the self-styled hillbilly candidate. He's really not a hillbilly. He was raised in the suburbs of Cincinnati. He's a hedge fund operator and a real dangerous character. So I mean, he's one of the front runners. The others are not much better, but we have a chance here in Ohio to I mean, Rob Portman, our Republican senator, is retiring. We have a chance to replace him with someone who will improve the chances of getting good Supreme Court justices approved in the future, and all kinds of things that the Senate could get done if it had a little bit less of a GOP stronghold in
That
it.
was
So I
a
think
hillbilly effigy dude. Is that the one Trump endorsed?
that's the one. And we had a great article about him in the PW not too long ago when his chances looked a little thinner. He's endorsed by that Peter Thiel, billionaire, really paid for by him. His candidacy is just based on his money. But he's gained some traction now, just being more right wing than anybody else. So he has a new ad out that sort of invites people to call themselves racist or whatever, just so
I'm not
long
a
as we
racist, but I hate Mexicans and I don't want them coming over the border.
exactly
Rosanna,
right.
he
Yes,
said that. I
he
mean,
did
just bold, blatant, cold-blooded, in your face
exactly.
racism.
That's right. That's right. So we really have to work hard before November to make sure people like J.D. Vance are not in the Senate at all, anywhere near the Senate. And
You
there's
got to
other
vote,
races in
y'all.
other states as well. Marco Rubio, we have a chance to defeat Marco Rubio this year. So there's going to be some really good Senate races coming up. Really hard work ahead.
You got to vote, y'all. Did you hear me? You got to vote.
I voted
Scott,
yesterday.
you got to vote, even if it's for some moderates and some liberals.
Mhm.
Vote. But if you don't, you're going to have an iron boot on your neck. And I'll tell you, iron boots don't feel good, Rosanna. I mean, it might feel good on your feet, but not on your neck. By the way, I heard that in the Washington D.C. that bald-headed surrogate to Donald Trump has agreed to testify before the House committee looking into the January 6th resurrection, insurrection. What's his name? You know, the guy from California. He's from California, Rosanna. Um, he was Trump's, he was the immigration hater. First, he worked for the Alabama senator who became the
Steve
attorney
Miller.
general. Huh?
Steve Miller?
Steve Miller. Steve Miller has agreed to testify before the House committee, looking into the insurrection, and now they're getting into Trump's inner circle, which is very important with
Yep.
respect to. So Orange County, Rosanna, he's one of them Orange County boys. I don't know what y'all
Or
grow
the
out
orange
there,
curtain.
huh?
We call that the orange curtain here.
Orange curtain. I don't know what
Yeah,
you grow out there behind the orange curtain, but you need to
right.
put some fertilizer on it and try to grow a different kind of crop. Well, let's move on. In Texas, Rosanna, there's a big struggle around the effort to prevent a woman by the name of Melissa uh, Lucio, I believe her name is, who was charged with killing her child. Baby was 2 years old, and she's on death row, I think. And there's a huge campaign to free her. That a number of celebrities and people in, I think, both sides of the aisle in Texas and around the country are campaigning to have her off of death row and granted amnesty. So does it really have you read about it?
Not too much. I'm totally against the death penalty anyway. I think that's just I don't understand it. It doesn't make any sense to me. You know, you kill somebody because they killed somebody. I don't. It doesn't. It doesn't make sense to me at all.
Barbarism.
Yeah, it's crazy. You know, let's look into what
Barbarism.
really happened. But you know, racist Texas is going to do a lot of things until people rise up and do something about it.
The death penalty is barbarism. I don't care if it's a socialist country or capitalist country. It's barbarism, right or wrong, Anita.
Absolutely right. I mean, you're punishing Melissa's mother. I don't know if Melissa still has parents alive, but why should they see their child be executed by the state, no matter what happened? I think everybody needs a chance for, even if it were a heinous crime, I think she needs the opportunity for redemption and rehabilitation, and her relatives need to not lose another one of their own.
There was another woman in Texas, Lizette Herrera, who was charged because she had a self-induced abortion with murdering her child under that new law.
Mm.
Can you imagine? And another big campaign, massive campaign of the people to defend her, and the charges were dropped. The charges were dropped.
People won. People's voice.
Huh?
People's right. When you raise your voice,
You got to
you make
speak up.
yourself heard.
Even
But
in
the
Texas,
charges were dropped this time. What about other cases that we haven't heard about? I'm sure there's going to be many, many more of women who just are desperate to not be pregnant, and I'm sure there's going to be bound to be other instances like this that we may not hear about in time.
and this affects all women. This affects all women, and
Well,
regardless of status and occupation and color and all of that, it's an all people's issue. It's a basic democratic issue, that we have to. That's why it's important, once again, to vote. Scott, you ain't said a word this morning. You all right?
I was waiting for you to call on me, Joe. I thought that was the procedure. Um,
That never stopped you
no,
before.
penalty is barbaric. There's no reason for it. It doesn't work. It's contrary to every notion of the function of a criminal justice system in socialist thinking, which has to be based on rehabilitation and strengthening the collective of the people. The death penalty does none of that, and it's an excuse for torture, um, and and um, and it's telling that it's being leveled um, here against uh, you know women of color. Um, the real we know who the real criminals in the society are. Um,
You know, and there's a concept in Marxism that I call consistent democracy. Consistent democracy. You have to, if you're going to be for something, you got to be for it all down the line, you know? So if we're for, against the death penalty under capitalism, we got to be against the death penalty under socialism too. Well, and the criteria has to be a working class criteria. It's
and
really
and and
important.
we have to be use that same mindset to think about any of the survivals of capitalist barbarism and brutality that might be that we might be tempted to carry over into socialism. Socialism is a chance to a revolution is a chance to start again, to do it better, and we have to be on our guard against importing any of the old bullshit.
You know, I agree wholeheartedly. Let's move the conversation just a little bit, and remember, vote, y'all. If you are opposed to these right wingers in Ohio and around the country, I don't just want to say Ohio. That's my home state, so don't misunderstand me. You got to vote to get them out. And if you're opposed to what's happening in Texas, and you're for a woman's right to choose, you got to vote. And if you take a look at what happened in New York the other day, terrorist shooting, dude walked into the subway, dropped smoke bombs, pulled out a Roscoe and started firing. 40 people got shot, 30 people. I mean, he bought the gun in Columbus. Is that true?
That's what I've heard at a pawn shop in Columbus, Ohio, which just goes to show that really without federal intervention and congressional action, federal laws, uh, gun control doesn't mean anything. If somebody can go from one state to another, Ohio has very lax gun rules, and there are certain circumstances where no background check is even needed. So this is the consequence of that. People do travel from place to place. So I think it's just a shameful thing for Ohio to be part of that whole horrible incident.
Meanwhile, Rosanna, the new mayor of New York, has an anti-terrorism task force clearing out the homeless who are camped in different places around the city. I mean, that's his campaign to clean up the city.
How is that connected to terrorism? Is my
I
question.
don't know. Maybe Scott, do you know how it's connected to terrorism?
Well, maybe he's trying to keep the homeless folks safe from the terrorists. That's all. I don't know. There's no connection. Obviously, this is another example of um, very cynical seizing on a grave social problem and using it as an excuse to funnel more money to the police, to increase the level of violence, and to do nothing to help people, unless those people happen to be, property developers who want the, value of their buildings to go up.
This is a true story. Anita,
Mm.
anti-terrorism unit was down in Tompkins Square Park. That's where your friend lives, near there.
I lived in
And
that neighborhood.
you know that neighborhood, down in
Yeah.
Alphabet City. They were down in Tompkins Square Park, clearing out the homeless. 2 blocks away, the terrorist who shot them folks, was at the McDonald's.
Mm.
They were busy clearing out homeless people, and the terrorist was 2 blocks away drinking some McDonald's coffee.
Hmm.
And
It
this
goes to show
Syrian
you what the
dude,
real purpose of the police are as an institution. It's they're not interested in keeping people safe or stopping crime. They're just serving the interests of the ruling class at
it's
any one time.
ridiculous. I'll tell you a little story. One day, about 10 years ago, I went riding my bike, right? Up West Side Highway. I had a beautiful, wonderful ride. Came back down, and I was coming back on 23rd Street, and I had my bike in one hand, and I'm on my scooter, and the police pulled up. Say, hey. I said, hey, whose bike is that? There's my bike. He said, where'd you get that bike? I said, you serious? He said, yeah, we're serious. And they jumped out the car, and they terrorized me for about a half hour because they thought I had stolen the bike.
Oh my God.
You know what I said to them? I said, why don't y'all go down to Wall Street and arrest some of them thieves who are stealing from our people instead of terrorizing me? That's what, I mean, it's just ridiculous what goes on in this country.
Hmm.
Anyway, that's what I call driving while black. Me on my scooter with my bicycle. And I don't know what kind of country this is becoming sometimes. So, are you in favor of gun control, Anita?
Am I in favor of gun control?
Yeah,
Certainly, I'm in favor of common sense gun control. That doesn't mean
common sense
banning
gun
all guns,
control.
but common sense.
Rosanna, you in favor of gun control? Yes or no?
Yes, I'm in favor of gun control. Not total gun control, because I understand people use it for hunting as a sport and things like that. But hunting people, I'm against that.
Me too. Don't hunt me. I don't want nobody hunting. Scott, you live in upstate New York. Gun
I
control or
I
no?
I had guns growing up. I learned to hunt. Um, didn't particularly enjoy it. Um, I'm for I'm for the right of the vast majority of the American people to come up with, yeah, common sense solutions to regulating these ridiculously powerful firearms that are being used over and over again in mass shootings. And it's not that most Americans oppose gun control. It's that a very well funded, very powerful lobby and a very small minority of the American people are insistent on absolute freedom to use guns um, wherever for whatever. And as we know, it's connected to male supremacy, to white supremacy, and to the idea that um, you know your property, your gun, gives you the right to do whatever you want. So yeah, I think the majority of the American people are for some common sense form of gun control, and I am too.
If you want to do something about people being shot in the subways in New York and around the country for no reason, vote. We had 3 great reasons to vote this morning. One, racist candidates like that hillbilly effigy guy. It's a bad slur on hillbillies, by the way. Even the term hillbilly is a ugly term. Uh, Women's right to choose, second reason to vote. And now to stop these terrorists. Uh, my, we grew up with guns too. In fact, there are more guns in Youngstown than you can shake 2 sticks at. I know you don't know, you don't like that phrase, Rosanna. Anyway, but it's true. And my father was a hunter. He hunted with a rifle and a bow and arrow. And one day he said he went out hunting and he pulled back his bow to shoot a deer. And he looked that deer right in the eye and he saw a little tear come down the deer's eye. And he
Mm,
said, he never killed another animal after that.
Mm.
Isn't that a wonderful story?
yeah.
Anyway, So we're going to move the agenda. Next point. Scott sent us Scott sent us a story. Oh my goodness! Some of the young gang members in L.A. are riding around some of the ritzy neighborhoods, Beverly Hills, and all of that, and they're robbing rich people. Scott, you want to tell the story? I think.
Yeah. So the LA Times ran an article: 17 gangs are targeting LA's wealthiest citizens. Seeing people coming out of fancy clubs and restaurants, or nice cars or whatever, and they're stealing jewelry and watches and all sorts of stuff. And that made me laugh a little. I'm not gonna lie. But what I really loved was the second paragraph of the article, where they said um, they're reselling these things to unscrupulous buyers who might be willing to turn a blind eye to the underlying violence. Like, aren't the people who buy those things in the first place turning a blind eye to the underlying violence? How do you think diamonds, get from Africa to Beverly Hills? It's not pretty. So that just made me sort of it's one of those things where you say that's capitalism, right? It just summed up so much. Um, I'm
What
not supporting
diamonds?
robbing people. I support collectively expropriating the expropriators. As a class. But I'm not encouraging anyone to go out and you know uh, mug people wearing $50,000 watches or whatever.
When we have a socialist republic, no matter what form it arrives in, and we decide to take over AT&T and Google and Microsoft and U.S. Steel and Chase Manhattan Bank. Anita, are you going to pay them? Did we talk about this last week?
Did
Uh,
we?
uh,
We're
are we
just
going to pay them what they're worth, compensation for their businesses?
what they're worth, maybe, which is probably not what they think they're worth. No, I mean, just this morning I was hearing a story about ski resorts and how much energy is wasted getting the ultra rich to their ski resorts for their skiing vacation. It just occurs to me that there should be no ultra rich people anywhere. That's wealth taken away from other people, and I think these gangs that are just taking their money away reminds me of James Scott's Weapons of the Weak, just taking things from the rich. These are not lumpen proletariat that prey on the working class. They're just primitive accumulators who are just taking from the ultra rich and keeping it themselves.
Somebody quoted St. Thomas Aquinas. I can't remember if it was Thomas Aquinas or St. Augustine, who, in one of his books, Rosanna, made the point this guy in a small boat was confronted by a sea captain in a big boat, and they were about to board the small boat, and the guy who was the captain of the small boat said to the captain of the big boat, "You go around with a big army, with an armada of 30 ships, and they call you a great captain." He said, "I only got one ship, and I do the same thing. Y'all call me a pirate." Well,
True.
your classification depends on your power.
Right.
So, are you going to compensate them guys or not, Rosanna?
Well, of course not. They're stealing from our working class. They're going to get their fair share, which is whatever what kind of work they do. What is their work? The labor, their labor power, nothing
Hmm.
more. I want to get back to this whole thing about what's happening here in Los Angeles, if I can, for a minute, because there's another underlying issue going on here. We have an attorney general, I forget his full title, here in Los Angeles, who is trying to who is trying to end mass incarceration. And the publication of these grab and jobs, was it, I don't forget what it's called, run and grab and stealing of people. They're blaming this particular person. His name is Gascon. I forget his first name. But it's an attempt to recall. He's under his second recall, and it's an attempt to get people to recall him. And the prison industrial complex does not like him, and so they've really set out a way to attack him by saying that he's releasing all of these criminals, and so now they're robbing the rich, but they haven't caught very many of them. So how could they know that these are pre-released? These are criminals that have been released. There was one newswoman that said, "Oh, and they have a long list of criminal activity, but yet they haven't arrested any one of them." So it's all this. It's there's deeper underlying attack on Attorney General who's trying to end some mass incarceration. He's lowered some, I don't know what the term is, into criminal activities, into misdemeanors that used to be, you know, you get thrown in jail immediately kinds of things. So there's a real struggle here. And, there is that question of, are these things being staged to, um, to sway the American people's support for Gascon and get him out?
If you want to do something about it, y'all, you got to vote. Again, there's a fourth reason for voting. They're doing the same thing to the prosecutor in Philadelphia, who has the same kind of track record of trying to reform the criminal injustice system and try to bring some more equality and justice into it. So again, if you want to do something about it, vote. Now, if you want to do something about supporting all of our efforts to bring about real change, you need to support the People's World Fund Drive. We got a fund drive going on, y'all, and we're trying to raise $75,000. I think we got about 58,000 in, and May Day is our deadline. And it is, we got 2 weeks to get the money in, and we're calling on all of our viewers and readers and supporters to go to peoplesworld.org and donate. All you got to do is put a slash and then hit donate, and whatever you can give, it's important.
And this is,
Go on.
yeah, it's so important right now. It's for me, it's so hard reading the New York Times and the Washington Post, which are my go-to, excuse me, mainstream newspapers, talking about the war in Ukraine. The relentless warmongering, the level of just blatant propaganda. It's but they are newspapers that represent the interests of the people that own them. The People's World is owned by the working class, and we have to keep it alive. It's more important now than ever. The more the struggle heats up, the more we need the People's World.
Anita, why do you think it's important to support this fund drive?
I think we desperately need the funds to keep the paper's project moving forward. We have a wonderful staff of writers and editors at the People's World. They've been tirelessly pursuing working class journalism, even through this pandemic, which was very difficult because of shortages of funds. So, I mean, like with J.D. Vance, I immediately went to the People's World to find that article, and some of their coverage on unions and on, as Scott said, on the Ukraine issue, on China. It's just been very good and just refreshing after reading the New York Times and the Washington Post and those sources.
But the Communist Press is just more than a news source, Rosanna. It's also a collective organizer of the people. It's a collective organizer of the people and a collective mobilizer. So it's not just, and I agree with the previous comments, that we get partisan news from the positions of the working class. We also get a means of organizing struggle. And that's important too. You know what I'm saying? Uh, it can be used on the picket line. It can be used in the fight against police violence.
Most definitely, it can. There isn't struggles that are there are struggles that are not even covered in the mainstream press, and to be able to read them at somewhere else to find out what's going on, even in your neighborhood, sometimes to get that perspective, a different perspective than you're inundated with this mainstream media of the same, but there's a different perspective and there's a different way of thinking of things, and that's what the People's World really offers. And definitely, a way to disseminate the information that is not being covered in the mainstream media, because they get stuck on one or two stories, and no matter what channel you turn it on to, or no matter what newspaper you go to, it's the same kinds of stories. But the People's World offers a lot more different worker struggles that you won't hear about.
And I want to say a word to the members of the party who are viewing this program. In order for that news to meet organization, to result in action, it means that we all have to move as one and act as one. That's what democratic centralism is about. And so when the National Committee says we got to raise $75,000, that means everybody has to do it in order for it to be effective. Everybody. You can't pick and choose what you want to support and what you don't want to support. If you truly, in your heart of hearts, believe in democratic centralism, and if you want the people's world to be the fighting voice that it needs to be, that it must be, in order for us to bring about social revolution, support the fund drive. Support the fund drive so that we can get down to the business building ongoing struggles like what happened at Amazon in Staten Island a couple of weeks ago, like what's going to happen on May Day in the big labor and immigrant rights demonstrations that's going to take place, and like what's going to happen on June 18th in DC at the Poor People's March. So I think that just about does it for us. If you are opposed to right-wing candidates, vote. If you support a woman's right to choose, vote. If you support progressive prosecutors and progressive candidates and elected officials all over, vote. If you want to stop gun violence, vote. And don't forget to donate to peoplesworld.org. Have a great week, everybody. Stay strong, stay safe, stay in the fight. Peace.